If you missed your favorite show or interview, visit episodes on our website at theworldtoday.news. Our live shows are also on X, Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, Kick, and Twitch. Now there really is no reason to miss out on anything on theworldtoday.news.
For The World Today, this is James O'Neill. 2 children, ages 8 and 10, were killed and 17 others injured when a gunman opened fire from outside Annunciation Church and School in Minneapolis on August 27th. Police said 14 of the wounded were children, with 2 critically injured. The shooter, in his early 20s, used multiple firearms before killing himself at the scene. Officials called the attack a deliberate act of cruelty against worshippers. President Trump and Governor Tim Walz issued statements of grief, while Mayor Jacob Frey described the shooting as unspeakable evil. The attack followed several unrelated shootings in Minneapolis this week. U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff said he will meet Ukrainian officials in New York this week while maintaining daily contact with Russia. He noted Vladimir Putin appears willing to end the conflict and hinted that President Trump may need to finalize a deal after his August summits with Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky. Vice President J.D. Vance said Moscow has made significant concessions, including recognizing Ukraine's need for security guarantees. Meanwhile, Russia and Ukraine traded drone attacks overnight, with strikes damaging infrastructure in Poltava and Sumy, while Rostov-on-Don in Russia also sustained civilian property damage. The U.S. doubled tariffs on India to 50% to punish its continued imports of discounted Russian oil, a major revenue source for Moscow's war in Ukraine. President Trump's secondary sanctions target Russia's customers rather than Moscow directly. India, one of Russia's largest energy buyers, imported over 1 million metric tons in July despite U.S. pressure. New Delhi insists purchases are economic, but Trump warned they undermine efforts to stop the war. Prime Minister Narendra Modi pledged domestic tax cuts to cushion consumers from sanctions. Denmark summoned the top U.S. diplomat in Copenhagen after reports that individuals linked to President Trump carried out covert influence operations in Greenland. Danish broadcaster DR said at least 3 Americans compiled lists of pro- and anti-Trump Greenlanders and cultivated local contacts to cast Denmark negatively in U.S. media. Greenland, a semi-autonomous Danish territory rich in minerals and strategically located in the Arctic, has long been targeted by Trump, who has suggested U.S. jurisdiction and not ruled out military force. Danish officials condemned any foreign interference, while intelligence services warned Greenland as a target for influence campaigns. ExxonMobil is considering rejoining Russia's Sakhalin-1 oil and gas project after leaving in 2022 amid the Ukraine conflict. Reports say senior executives, including Neil Chapman, held secret talks with Rosneft CEO Igor Sechin in Doha. President Vladimir Putin recently authorized Exxon to reclaim its stake, coinciding with his Alaska summit with Donald Trump, where economic cooperation was discussed. Exxon's potential return depends on terms offered by Moscow and Washington, as well as progress in peace negotiations. The U.S. firm seeks to recover losses, while Rosneft values its expertise. Reform UK leader Nigel Farage vowed that if elected, he would withdraw Britain from the European Convention on Human Rights and scrap Tony Blair-era laws that enable illegal migrants to block deportation. Farage argued that only mass detention and deportations could stop illegal channel crossings. Labour's government condemned the proposal as reckless, warning it would align with the UK with Russia and Belarus. Critics say the ECHR underpins key agreements, including the Good Friday peace deal. Farage's stance highlights frustration with rulings that have prevented deportations, even of convicted criminals, fueling fierce debate on immigration and sovereignty.
And when they're picked up by Border Force give the life jackets back to the French so they can reuse them on the next journey. I mean, we're literally witnessing 2 governments colluding in their support of criminal activity.
This has been James O'Neill for The World Today.
If you missed your favorite show or interview, visit episodes on our website at theworldtoday.news. Now there really is no reason to miss out on anything on theworldtoday.news.
Many things happening right now, right across the world. The UK is asleep, but the world continues to rotate around. Certainly does, even if it's flat, which it's not. On the weekend, we have the Australia rally, and I think it's a good idea. But it's become a political hotbed, as with the sovereign citizens, and we'll talk about that later in the hour. First of all, I don't give a rat's what colour you are. And as with the UK, and they admit it, there is two laws. One for the ethnic race and one for the others, the Brits in the UK. So in Australia, we must also be following suit. An African thug who bashed a Brisbane bus driver in front of horrified passengers has avoided jail. Cam, can you play bus?
Fuck off!
He was given a suspended sentence and ordered to pay $1,000 in compensation. Now, that was bad. But what about the passengers? They just stood there. Guy nonchalantly walks over. It's dreadful. What about the passengers? He let the bus driver take a beating. They let the bus driver take a beating. And all they were saying is, stop, stop. What about jumping to his aid? Anyway, I thought that was... this guy laid into him. He should have been sentenced. You don't do that. Not if you're working, if you're doing a service for the community, driving a bus. But I think worse still, no one jumped to his aid. Pretty bad, isn't it? Now, they're still ramping up the vaccines, aren't they? At the moment, vaccines they're not going to die in this country. We've had the government saying that that vaccines basically are here to stay. That's what they're saying. We have a lot of the politicians. Look at Katie, what's her name? Katie, what's her face? Yesterday, the government's not going to release the data, the documents. Why not? And she said, "Oh, it's just another thing from a anti-vaxxer and anti-vaxxer senator." Anti-vaxxer? They're still using that garbage they used a couple of years ago. Anti-vaxxer. Anyway, Moderna. Teal MP Monique Ryan, who's not a very sharp person. That's his common knowledge. Monique Ryan is not the sharpest pencil in the pack. She spent her time in Parliament praising Moderna vaccines. Cam, can you play Moderna?
Do we welcome the Moderna facility in Australia? Moderna in Australia? Yes, we do. Australia's world-class health and medical research capacity, with which I am personally and particularly familiar, makes us an obvious location for world-class pharmaceutical manufacturing. During the pandemic, Moderna's vaccine development was the fastest ever seen globally. And Moderna's mRNA vaccine for COVID saved millions of lives. Do we need to expand our vaccine manufacturing domestically? We clearly do. Right now, only one COVID-19 vaccine is available in Australia. That's Pfizer's Comirnaty JN.1. The Albanese government actually decided not to replenish supplies of Moderna mRNA vaccine in late 2024. Those unable to receive mRNA vaccines have been unable to access any form of COVID vaccine in Australia since July 2024, and this has caused a lot of distress to those people who are keen to access the Novavax vaccine. We know that 2 COVID-19 variants are currently active in Australia. A recent COVID wave affected more than 200 aged care facilities. Most older Australians have not been immunised for 6 months or more.
There you are. It's pretty ugly, isn't it? Monique Teal. Monique Teal. Sorry about that, not Monique Teal. We have the Teal MP, Monique Ryan. She should be called... Fancy have a name like Ryan. Got to hide the alcohol. Dr. Peter Johnston is a retired GP and a victim, so we should play some Jaws music of AHPRA. Peter, thanks for joining us. Moderna is one of Monique's pin-up businesses. What do you think about Moderna and the vaccines and this propensity from government ministers, government now, independent ministers or independent politicians? They're all on the bandwagon again on how great the vaccines are. Why haven't they let it go?
It's extraordinary, Mike. When I hear Monique saying Moderna's the fastest developed thing, as though it's sort of something to be proud of, that you've developed it so fast that you haven't had time to check whether it's safe or effective. I think one of the problems we're having that RFK Jr. is having in the States is because Trump's still proud of having produced the vaccine at warp speed. So just to start with that, I think that's one of the problems. As for our world-class research and development, I'm not so sure about that. But one thing that is certainly not correct that Monique's saying is that COVID saved millions of lives. I don't think it saved any in Australia because the vaccine was created against the original Wuhan variety of COVID. But once once it mutated to Delta and Omicron, the vaccines were useless, totally useless. And we knew that. I knew that 4 years ago when I answered the charges from AHPRA. And we knew it from Provincetown in America because they had a 4th of July celebration just as the Delta started. And it became a super spreader event of which 500 people were affected with COVID. And of them, 75% were fully vaccinated. And their nasal secretions, the viral level was the same whether you're vaccinated or not. So we knew it wasn't working. And the next year, in 2022, we had, I think, 12 million cases of COVID in Australia. So it's 45% of the country were affected with COVID when we were 95% vaccinated and 70% boosted. So as for saving lives, I don't think there's any evidence it saved any lives.
I just want to play this your things boinging away. Play this clip. This is from a couple of years ago, of course. And I would like to know your thoughts on this. Cam, could you play vaccines, please?
Are any of the vaccines dangerous or going to kill you?
There's no evidence at all that any of the vaccines are dangerous or would kill you. They're all very, very carefully tested by our TGA, which is one of the best regulatory authorities in the world.
So there you are. We know who that is. We know what that was about. How could they get it so wrong? Were they either they were nongs, complete nongs, and nothing but a nong, or they were dishonest and bordering on being, many would say, corrupt?
Well, I'd be inclined to go that way. Just out of interest, Mike, I sent a letter to Monique Ryan when she was early on when she was elected, congratulating her. And eventually I wasn't getting any answer, so I eventually sent it by registered mail, and I did get a response. But one of the things I said to her at the time was that I resigned last year after learning my practice was going to start injecting 12 to 15-year-olds with the experimental Pfizer COVID vaccine. Pfizer and the TGA had hoped to bury their data for 75 years, but a judge decided otherwise. Hence, we discovered that in the first 3 months of the rollout, there were 1,223 deaths and 1,291 different complications of their COVID jab, including many autoimmune diseases I'd never even heard of. There was the evidence very early that it was toxic.
Yeah, it's just a, I think, I don't know, we used to have an opposition once in this country. The opposition was to keep the government honest, as that famous politician once said to keep the bastards honest. But do you see any difference now? Because we have all sides of politics at the moment pushing the vaccines. Yet we know in the US, from the US, we know from other data from all over the world, but the US leading the way in with Robert Kennedy Jr. doing what he can to stop this gene therapy crap and releasing poisons onto its citizens. In Australia, for example, they seem to be, the more that Trump, and don't forget, Trump though also did warp speed, so he's not an angel here by anyone's imagination or stretch of imagination. But however, they're now bit by bit disassembling the gene therapy factories or psyche. Oh, it's going to make you better. It's fantastic. It's really new. We don't know what it's going to do to you, but let's go and do it. That sort of attitude is disappearing. Is going back to the, especially if you look at the sackings of the head of the CDC. People now are being put in their place and said, you cannot go out and poison and do things that you don't know the answer to the American people. Why is it that the Australian government and the medical fraternity or medical mafia, why aren't they doing the same? Before you answer that, I can tell you why. One, they're the pig-headed, don't admit you're wrong. And two, if Trump is doing something, he's doing it wrong, and we're going to do it exactly the opposite because whatever he does, he's wrong. So we're right. Would that be the correct answer there?
I think you're right. I think, according to statistics, 2/3 of Australians have TDS, the Trump derangement syndrome. They can't stand Trump, whatever he does. And look, you can see why. The media has absolutely done everything they could to destroy it, globally, not just in the Australia or US. And that's a big factor. But the bigger factor, in my opinion, is that America had a uni party. It didn't matter whether you were Republican or Democrat. They were still run by the globalists or the military-industrial complex, military-industrial pharmaceutical complex, Communist Party, social, whatever you call it. I call it the dark forces. In Australia, we've got all four parties are like a uni party. We've had heroes individually amongst our politicians. Unfortunately, we lost two of them at the election, in Gerard Rennick and Russell Broadbent. But we haven't had the numbers to do it. Trump was an absolute disruptor. He's a one-off because he entered via the Republican Party, but was hated by the Republican Party because he aimed to drain the swamp. And the people started to go with him. He started to get the following, and now he's the second time round. He's really doing the damage. And even though he might disagree with RFK Jr. on some of these points, I noticed this last one you mentioned on the head of the CDC. Now, RFK Jr. asked her to resign on Monday. She refused, so he went to Trump. And because Trump appointed her, even with Senate approval, he sacked her. Then you've got four others resigning because they could see that they were all vaccine enthusiasts, and it's wonderful to see these people leaving the CDC. It gives it a chance. But I think a lot of what we've got to realise too is just the extent of the opposition. Bill Gates has got billions at his disposal and employees in the thousands. Up against the Freedom parties are very small, but it is amazing what Trump and his team are doing in the States. But we just don't have that power out here in Australia, and that's the sad situation, really.
What about the emergency use authorisation? It's been revoked in the US. What
yes,
about Australia? What do we call ours? Is it still the emergency use authorisation here? And how keen do you think they are to eradicate it?
Yeah, they're getting the emergency use authorisation in the first place was that to me was always interesting. The reason they had to get rid of ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine and these things was because you couldn't get emergency or use authorisation for a disease if you already had a cure for it. And that's the only way they got the vaccine to get that authorisation. Now I think they've withdrawn it 4 years later, nearly that. I think it is 4 years later. But they're still allowing the COVID shot to be given for high-risk patients, which really makes them even more high risk, in my opinion. But why do I think that is? I'm a big fan of AHPRA. I think he's trying to take people with him because he doesn't want to. He wants to get rid of mandates, but he doesn't want to mandate not to disallow people to have it if they choose to have it. So I think he still wants to allow that. To me, the biggest one that's going to wreck the whole vaccine system could be coming next month when he said they're on track to see what autism and its relationship to what presumably diet and vaccine. It will be coming up soon. Once that hits, it's going to be difficult. I think one of the other things Monica Ryan just out of interest said that only the Pfizer vaccine is available at this stage. They Novavax unavailable and the Moderna unavailable. Basically, it's probably unavailable because at the beginning of last year, it was less than 7% of people were up to date with their boosting. So basically, the people, while they're making much noise about it, most people are voting with their feet and not having the COVID shots. So why not invest more money in it?
You have a bit of noise in the background, Peter. I'm not too sure whether you're sitting in a cyclone or something, but or you had a wild bowl of chili last night, but it's fairly windy to say the least. I'm just yeah, so anyway, probably not the chili bit. Hopefully not. Otherwise, I take pity on those around you. I'm just wondering about in the US, pediatricians are going against the CDC's guidelines and the whole child vaccine schedule. What they're doing is they are saying that we want to give children the jab. I mean, I won't say how sick is that. How nuts is that? I mean, they don't even know the end result, yet they're pushing to give children, from 6 months upwards, the vaccine. What's it like in Australia? Are they still, or first of all, do we have the restrictions that, no, you can't give it to children as they do in the US, or is it here that it's, one for all, just go and do what you want to do? What sort of regulations do we have at the moment when it comes to vaccines for kiddies?
RFK Jr., when RFK Jr. Withdrew the authorisation for children and pregnant mothers for the vaccine, for under 18s and the vaccine, the actual Australia did follow suit in no longer recommending it to children under 18, but they haven't removed the veto on giving it to pregnant mothers. So hopefully not too many of them are having it.
Yeah, I think it's terrible. I think anyone that pushes the vaccine not knowing what the outcome is going to be, well, we do know that instead of safe and effective, which is that catchy phrase, it's now sudden and unexpected. I'm just looking at in Australia, are mandates still operating in some Australian states or private organisations?
I think they are in some private organisations that I'm hearing. I'm not sure as far as states are concerned. I haven't heard much of it of late. I think I got the impression people were just trying to pretend it all didn't happen and hope it all goes away and no one comes back asking for to know more details about the whole thing, really.
Just to finish up, we have a clip here from Donald Trump. And they asked him about autism. I'll play this clip. Cam, if you could play autism, please.
So there has to be something artificially causing this, meaning a drug or something. And I know you're looking very strongly at different things, and I hope you can come out with that as soon as possible.
We will.
So 1 in 10,000, and now it's 1 in 31 or 34 or 12 if it's a boy. Can you imagine that? 1 in 12. That's for a boy.
On average, 12.5
It's
boys.
not even believable.
So there you are. The numbers of autism at the moment is horrendous. Someone wrote on X, claiming something like a drug. And someone said something artificial like, he's tan, his hair, or half the stories. But take that away. It's a horrendous number, isn't it? And to see it increasing with autism, what would you? And you were. Hang on, let's take the other one. You were a doctor for many years. You would have seen the decline or people's health get better or get worse. Do you see a common thread? That is it our lifestyle? Is it the number of vaccines we're taking that created autism? What was your observations?
Look, I never put two and two together until Andrew Wakefield brought out his article with 11 other physicians in which he suspected that MMR vaccine was related to autism. And that would have been, I think, around 1999. I think it's probably 25 years ago. And that, my ears pricked up with that because I'd had problems with vaccine, severe reactions to vaccines among my patients. And but then soon after we heard that, it was all fake and most of them had pulled out, the other 11, and that it was, he was lost his license and was charged with fraud and all the rest of it. And I thought that was, that whistling coming from. But sorry. Anyway, that alerted me. But then I was sort of reassured by the response from the medical profession that considered all that fraudulent. However, he stuck to his guns, and now I'm quite sure he'll be validated possibly next month when RFK answered that question from Trump, which he said he's on track to has definite connections to whatever he'll bring out next month.
Yep, interesting times. If somebody needs to find out more about you, Peter Johnston, how do they do that?
Yes, look, I'm Healthcare Workers for Truth.org, ORG, is my website.
So that's healthcareworkers.org.
Yeah,
that's healthcareworkers.org, yep. And what about on X? Do you have an account there so you can get banned?
Look, I have, but I haven't really been working on it of late.
Peter,
I'm happy to do that.
we need you to become more vocal because you are an important part of the landscape, so to speak, and with your experience and having that notch in your belt that you had your head removed temporarily from AHPRA. And that's one notch you don't want to lose. I watch a video on TV, and one of the guys who does his video says, and I've been proudly banned by this particular company. And I'm thinking, he's proud of it. So, I mean, you've had a similar running with AHPRA, except they're more vicious. Tell me this, I asked Mark Morano yesterday about something. If you were in a boat with the TGA and AHPRA, and surrounding that boat, you had piranha and man-eating sharks who were waiting for dinner, which would you feel more safe in, the boat or in the water?
That's a line ball, isn't it?
I'd go with the sharks, let me tell you. All right. Dr. Peter Johnston, thank you very much for your time. This is The World Today. Thank you.
People might tell you that Lyme doesn't kill people, but we are losing people. People disappear from their lives.
One of the scariest things that I had to deal with was memory loss. Not just like I don't remember what I did last week, but like I forgot all the words to my own songs. I remember going to my primary care physician and he was like, "You are 100% healthy, there's nothing wrong with you." And my response was, "That's impossible, I'm dying."
I wasn't working. So I had all of these hospital bills. We had to move out of our home and move into my parents' basement.
I just wish I could have truly been present in those big moments, when she took her first steps or, her first day of preschool. Lyme is such a thief and it goes undetected because no one is looking for it.
For more information and prevention tips, go to projectlyme.org.
Anticipate potential delays for the morning commute. In other news, a recent government report on prescription drug pricing points to corporate
Freedom of the press is about your right to know.
What are you talking about, man? Look at his stats.
It's about your right to be informed. Your right to access all types of information keeps us free as a nation.
No.
Today, there are real threats to press freedom.
Reaching residential areas by...
And your right to know about the world around us.
Look.
Some threats are obvious, some are easy to miss, but they all put our way of life at risk. We must defend against all of these threats, no matter what kind of news is important to you.
Justified putting American troops in harm's way?
That's a great question.
We must protect our right to know before it's too late. Understand the threats. ProtectPressFreedom.org.
The common housefly, caught in the clutches of the spider's web. Every move it makes just makes matters worse. Then, dinner time.
Feast on the captivating stories, videos, and helpful information on our website.
Whoa.
Dinner's ready.
Oh, man.
Escape is futile.
Just one more video.
Get stuck in our web.
This is today's News Talk, theworldtoday.news.
Okay, we're talking about, all week we've been talking about since the terrible shooting with those, the murder of those two policemen and the wounding of the other three who went out there to have a chat to a particular person, and they were ambushed. Well, that's allegedly ambushed and shot and killed, which we do not doubt at all. But there's a mass, what would I say? It's a, after the far right, that's it, after the far right extremism, we're going to make sure that we're going to do away with this, perceived terrorism and these extremists and just terrible, terrible people. And let's go after, first of all, the sovereign citizens. We've got to go after them too. They're going to just make sure that they don't tear apart this country. Terrible people. They are. Well, that's according to a lot of the politicians. And by the way, I'm a Catholic, and we find that someone in a church 400 miles away goes and shoots somebody, it doesn't mean that all Catholics are going to go out and shoot someone. And same thing with the sovereign citizens. Same thing with any group. You can't blame the whole group. What it is that these people, and I don't agree with what they're saying in many areas, but they have a right. They have a right to say what they want to say and to believe in what they want to believe. If you take it a bit further than that, then there are consequences, but they have a right to do that. The guy who shot those coppers, he should be taken down, locked away forever, and never released, because you don't go and kill, especially those doing service for the community and protecting the community, which is debatable at times. You don't go and do that. But as for the sovereign citizen, or for that matter, people marching on the weekend because they're saying, we love Australia. It is not a racist march. It is a march saying that we don't want our country to go down the path of the UK, for example. They're bordering on civil war. That's not me saying it. It's all the commentators and the politicians in the UK. They're that close to having a civil war. Pauline Hanson is way behind, right behind, and rightly so. This march on August 31, right around Australia. Cam, can you play Pauline Hanson, please?
And Australians feel they've been stripped of their own identity. They're ashamed, that they're ridiculed by even their own councils if you fly the Australian flag. It's all right to see the Palestinian flag out in these protest rallies and all these other, even Hamas flags, terrorist flags. But, people just feel the point of flying the Australian flag. On Sunday, there is supposed to be this march for Australia. For those Australians out there that do want to go out and have their say and wave the Australian flag, good on you. I congratulate you because you're standing up for the values that you feel have been stripped from you by governments, whether it's this government or previous governments, former governments. You just feel that you're not being listened to. And this country is not the country that I grew up in. I'm ashamed of where we're headed. All this wokeness, the escalating crime, the cost of living, high electricity costs, the decline in our moral values that is happening, all this transgender rubbish and what's going on with women, spaces, it's just absolutely disgusting. And so many of you support it here. Where are your morals and your principles and your values? I can't understand it. That we're supposed to represent the Australian people. The decline that I see in my nation, and I feel sorry for those men and women that have fought and sacrificed their lives to give us the democracy and give us a nation that we should be also proud of.
So there you are. That's Pauline Hanson, and I agree with her 101%. So on behalf of this is a statement on behalf of the Albanese government. Ministers Tony Burke and Anne Alley have condemned the upcoming March for Australia rallies, saying they undermine social cohesion and represent far-right activism, grounded in racism and ethnocentrism. So in other words, don't march for Australia. The other day there was marches around Australia for, people were fed up with the killing of innocent people in Gaza. The Palestinians were being murdered. And people had flags, had many flags, Palestinian flags. Nothing wrong with that. It was for the Palestinians. It wasn't saying that we're doing this for Australia. It was saying Israel must stop the killing. Simple as that. So this weekend, I hope that everybody that attends these rallies, if you can get to it, have an Australian flag. Fly it on your car, fly it on your house. Because this is your country. You own this country. Not one breed of people, not one race. It's all Australians, and you own this country. So you fly your flag. Anybody that says otherwise, tell them to go to buggery, as Peter Campion would also back that up in a second. Now, we have compiled, with thanks to some friends of ours, some video on a script that we think is very much like COVID. If you think about it, safe and effective, safe and effective, safe and effective. Oh, safe and effective. So, no, it's not. It was sudden and unexpected. Now we have, the sovereign citizens, sovereign this, sovereign that, bad people, extremism, far right extremism. Notice how they're saying they have to control it. By the way, the other day they were saying that we must control the internet. Stop this, people talking, how dare you say something I don't like? Or maybe a few hurty words. I mean, we're adults. Anyway, Cam, can you play Sovereign Script, please?
Your viewers will know the rise of the sovereign citizen movement.
He's a so-called sovereign citizen.
In terms of the sovereign citizen movement,
self-declared sovereign citizen.
We have got a problem with these so-called sovereign citizens.
Well, we're hearing a lot about this so-called sovereign citizen movement.
The sovereign citizen movement.
Believed to subscribe to the sovereign citizen ideology.
How worried are you about the rise of this sovereign citizen movement?
Because this man lives off the grid and is a so-called sovereign citizen.
I think it's a real concern, James.
Simply as you can, what sovereign citizens and pseudo-law actually are.
Yeah, I'll call it, they're becoming a national security problem.
About far-right extremism.
I mean, that's just nuts. And there's Jackie Lambie yesterday, we had her on, had an American on, and she was saying, beat him with a stick. I mean, truly. Which cave have these people come out of? Shut the F up. That's what I'd say. Shut up. You got no right telling us what to do. You can't even run your own life. And as for the others, Albanese, I mean, what a bloody hypocrite this guy is. I'm ashamed sometimes they call themselves Australians. Anthony Albanese, he wouldn't know if his foot was on fire, truly. What about Bridget McKenzie, formerly of the Nationals, still with the Nationals and the Conservatives? We're going to look after your rights. You can say what you like. You get the right to protest, providing it's peaceful, blah, blah, blah. Nah, the Conservatives are as bad as, or if not worse, because they're lying mongrels. They want to take away your freedom. They want you to do as you're told. Get in your box. How dare you? We know best. No, you don't. You're idiots. You got there through lies and corruption and whatever. You're idiots. Look at Bob Catter. Mate, how dare you threaten to punch someone, by the way? Act like a bloody politician. Represent your people. And that's a problem. These people they don't represent you. They don't work for you. You work for them. Anyway, back to Senator Bridget McKenzie. Cam, play McKenzie, please.
Yeah, I think it's a really growing concern. I'm sure your viewers will know the rise of the sovereign citizen movement. I get a lot of emails as a federal senator into my office, with citizens claiming their own sovereignty. And this seems to be a growing trend, and it is concerning. I think not just our local police officers, but the AFP needs to be actually examining this growing trend so that we can develop the right strategies around it. But Port Punk is just down the road from where I live. This is my community, and obviously we are all in shock at what has occurred, and my thoughts and prayers are obviously with not just the families of the slain police officers, but with the force in Vicpol as well.
Yeah, and so we should. We need to, those poor coppers, the families, friends, colleagues, that guy, he must be held accountable, and the full force of the law. But it's ridiculous to blame another movement. I mean, my dad was a copper. He used to charge many people that were pillars of the church, worked for the Scouts, teachers, whatever. Doesn't mean the whole organisation is full of them. It means someone has acted on his own and his own fruition and decided to do something absolutely terrible. But to blame, and by the way, I'm not a friend of the sovereign citizens. I don't believe what they're saying, but they have a right to say it. It's Australia. Peter Campion is a libertarian and a proponent of the traditional Australian values. Peter, what's this smearing of an organisation? It seems like there's a lot more than what is being said.
Yeah, they're creating a straw man, Mike. They're looking to demonise anyone that's a patriotic Australian, anyone that believes in traditional Australian values, anyone that rejects the direction the government is taking us, the Labor, Liberal, National, Green, Teal uni-party government, because they're in lockstep together. And they want to create an enemy, a force to be reckoned with out of thin air. And we've seen them do this time and time again. And we see all these talking heads reading from the same script, exactly as we saw with COVID since 2000, exactly as we've seen with climate change since 1982. Humans are a species that's very capable of pattern recognition. And what we're seeing is the same pattern repeating. When they call this microscopically small and highly fragmented group of people who primarily just want to be left alone by government, some sort of group, some sort of organisation, and far-right extremists, I guess it depends how far left you are on that fake linear political spectrum. If you're at the extreme left, like people behind the uni party appear to be, then from that perspective, everyone is far right. But if we're going to talk about that, again, fake linear perspective, and I say fake because politics is more like a soccer ball. It's a sphere covered in patches, and patches are joined on different sides. So it's an oversimplification to say there's a left and a right. And to smear a group as far right, to imply that they're Nazis or Hitler, well, Hitler wasn't far right. Hitler was to the right only of Stalin. Hitler was a national socialist. The part that is key was socialist. He wanted socialism in Germany. That's not remotely centrist. That's not a centrist position, and it's not a right-wing position. If you go to the extreme end again of that fake linear spectrum, you come to anarchists who pretty much don't want any sort of government interference in their lives and just want to make up rules as they go along. Well, we know that doesn't work in a civilized society. We've got to have some sort of rules. We've got to have a system that we all agree with, where we can get along with each other and trade and prosper. But at the end of the day here, we've got the demonisation of ordinary Australians. Now, this march coming up on Sunday is primarily against immigration, mass immigration that's flooding us, that's overwhelming our infrastructure. Now, our forebears, generations of them, built the infrastructure we enjoy. They built the roads, the hospitals, the schools, the dams, the power stations, all the things you need to run a modern civilization in the 21st century. And these immigrants are being, well, I say immigrants because that's the correct term, because they're being brought in legally. They're not just marching across a border as we see in the EU or as we saw in the US under Biden. They're being brought in legally, and they're not required to put down any sort of commensurate input to what our own forebears have put in, what our families have put in over many generations. So I would have thought that as a minimum, they'd be required to stump up about $500,000 each just to build the extra roads, schools, hospitals, water supplies and electricity supplies that they need. But this is not what's going on. What we're seeing is the mass importation of people who will vote reliably for the far left of the left-wing Labor, Liberal, National, Green, Teal Uni Party. And let's consider for a moment what our parliamentarians are meant to be doing in our parliament. And the late, great constitutional scholar Arthur Tresby, with a CH, by the way, he wrote a short book called Your Will Be Done. And in that, he unpacks, it's still available online, just search it. In that, he unpacks the sole constitutional obligation of a parliamentarian, and that is to represent the will of his or her electorate. So my local federal MP is Bob Catter, who you touched on earlier, being a bit aggressive towards the media there. His sole obligation is to consider what the people of Kennedy want and take that to Parliament and to act in accordance with that will. Similarly, a senator, let's pick Matt Canavan, for example. His constituency is Queensland. So he's meant to be in the House of Review and to say yes or no to laws on the basis of how they affect Queensland. But we're not seeing that with our federal parliament. We're not seeing that with our state parliaments. It's not seeing it with our local governments. The whole system has been hijacked. It's been hijacked by a group from outside Australia, because it has to be from outside Australia, because we're seeing the exact same thing rolled out in every Western nation simultaneously. We see the equivalent talking heads in the media in France, in the media in the UK, and the political personnel in each of those countries. They're saying the exact same thing. So they're getting talking points from somewhere. And they do say that politics and really the left-wing legacy-controlled corporate news media is just Hollywood for ugly people. And they get up there and they're helicoptered into their positions and they read their lines. Like, no one for a second would believe that Anthony Albanese made it to the position of Prime Minister of Australia twice on his own merits, on his own knowledge and experience, and his rational and careful analysis of issues. No, he's there because he was put there, because forces that are powerful, that have a lot of money, have decided that he is the right man to facilitate the destruction of the society, the once successful society that Australia enjoyed as recently as the 1990s. So I'm a child of the 60s and grew up in the 60s and 70s. And to be fair, I was in a small North Queensland town. I was in Cairns at the time when it was under 50,000 people. And a cyclone came one time and we thought, oh, gee, we better lock the house up. And we'd never done that before, and the whole time we'd lived there. And We found some of the windows didn't shut. And the back door didn't close, much less
Hide the
lock.
beer. You've got to hide that beer.
Yeah. So, there was no need for security. There was no crime. We were a high trust society. Everybody respected everybody else's right to property and freedom and to pass unmolested, to go about their business. We're not seeing that now. We're seeing micromanagement of every aspect of our affairs by this government that's not acting in accordance with our will.
Can I ask you something? So I don't mean to butt in here because we have limited time, and I want to ask you because I look at your tweets and your comments, at your ex-posts and stuff, and I'm always nodding my head, going, "Yep." I see where the daughter got the common sense from because you used a lot of rights, and there's someone telling you again to behave yourself.
Apology.
But I'm just thinking though, this hysteria. I mean, it was terrible that those poor coppers were shot. It was absolutely, and I think the guy needs to be dealt with accordingly. However, because we have the e-safety commission and all this, how bad the internet is. Well, in this day and age, the internet is our voice. It's the way that you and I can talk from long distances. It's the way to get your message over. We look at the legacy media in this country. It is declining dramatically. It won't ever go away, but it's going to have less and less impact as time goes on. If you need to shut down the opposition to legacy media, which is the government voice, if you need to shut that down, you have to then shut down the internet. Now, how do you shut down the internet? Oh, that's right. We've got these extremists out there. We've got people who are going to go after kiddies. They're going to do all sorts of terrible things. We've got scams online, Let's control the internet. And that's what the government wants to do. The opposition's communication minister said that she wants to control the internet. So if you control the internet and shut down the basic right of a democracy, that is free speech, and you have no one speaking out against the current government, how dangerous is that?
Well, that's about as dangerous as it gets, Mike.
But we're going that way, aren't we? We are going that way.
Yeah. This is the same old Marxism, Leninism that was rolled out in the USSR back in the post-war period, in China beginning in the 50s, I'm blanking on the country that Pol Pot ruled over. It's the same pattern. See, the globalist left don't have any original ideas. They only have the same scripts that they roll out again and again. Now, any totalitarian regime, the very first thing it does is it disarms its population. And in Australia, we still have some lawful firearm ownership. And the way to attack that is to, what we saw at Wayambilla, is they send police in who are underbriefed on the situation to people who are known to the senior management to be incredibly hostile to the police. Now, there's other ways they could have done that without incurring police fatalities. And I imagine in the fullness of time with this latest event, we'll find that that's the case as well, that there would have been a way that whole situation could have been addressed without having police crashing into the chap's actual residence and triggering the response. And we've seen this with false flags again and again throughout history, is they put the innocent, respected people, the police or the soldiers, whoever, the Navy, in harm's way, and then they say, look what these evil people did. This is just the same tired script over again, and we know where it's headed. First, they'll take the ability to defend against government tyranny, then they'll silence speech. And this is exactly what the American founding fathers anticipated with their experience of having escaped European British royal family tyranny back in the 1700s. They established their constitution with their Bill of Rights, their first 10 amendments, entirely cognizantly of the level of tyranny that builds up with a ruling class over the course of time. Now, when our country was established, when our constitution was written, that Bill of Rights was well over 100 years old, and it was on the table in front of our Constitution's framers, but they didn't include them because we were founded to be ruled and controlled by tyrants. We were never offered the opportunity of constitutional protection. And at the moment, probably the only way we're still allowed to talk to each other in this medium is because of the 1992 High Court decision, which said that the one approximate human right that Australians have is the right to free speech about politics, because without it, you can't have the constitutional monarchy system functioning correctly. And I imagine that this e-safety Karen will find a way to eliminate that one precarious right that we have that, was effectively just the result of a High Court interpretation. Because at the end of the day, they don't want us speaking. As you correctly said, they don't want us communicating, and they regard the sovereign citizens as this incredible threat to them, because the sovereign citizens are expressing views that are entirely contradictory to the views that they want to get out there.
And except for this guy, and I do not blame at all the sovereign citizens for what he has done, it is an individual. It is not the group collective, or so far we know that. And if they want to believe that, or anybody wants to believe that there are Martians that they're coming up through the sewer system, good on them. That's their right. We don't have to believe them. We don't have to associate with them. But that is their right of free speech. And I think the old Australian, or the old value that countries had around the world of tolerance, the traditional Australian values, was that we let the other person have his say. We might call him a whacker or something, and then you buy a beer each and you get on with living. Can you tell us your ideas of the traditional Australian values before we wrap this up?
Well, the way I view the traditional Australian values is that we respected one another's freedom of speech. We respected one another's right to bodily autonomy, that is, to not be mandated to receive an experimental injection that turned out to be very harmful. We had the right to enjoy our own property, to pursue our own dreams, to create businesses, to produce wealth, to fish, to farm, to log as appropriate in a properly managed forest, to mine minerals, to sell them, to produce wealth through manufacturing. But we also had the respect for one another, the mateship, as you said, that we had each other's backs. We wanted to support each other. And when a foreigner made the decision to come and live with us, we'd help them integrate. Now, a society can be multiracial. And in fact, my bevy of mates back at school, I was thinking about this the other day. We had an Asian guy, a Greek guy, an Aboriginal guy, a Torres Strait Islander guy, a couple of mixed breed mongrels like myself. And race was never mentioned. We were just blokes that got on well, that thought alike, that could share experiences and have a laugh, as you say. And, occasionally we might have gotten a punch up with each other, but, we'd get over that and move on. But yeah, it's pretty ordinary. Australian values are pretty universal human values. We just want to be left alone by government, to be peaceful, to be productive, to enjoy our surroundings and our environment, and not be dictated to, not be micromanaged, not be controlled. We don't want the World Economic Forum vision of owning nothing and being happy. We don't want to eat the bugs, Mike.
I don't know, cockroaches. I mean, if you've had a motorbike before, you know how delicious grasshoppers are. But no, I totally agree. And I think we are our own country. We have our own. And by the way, I used to be quite critical of the she'll be right, mate attitude. And I have to say, I can't believe it. I'm longing for those days again, because, and this is not, I used to hear my grandfather say this. But a few years ago, life was very simple. You did wrong, you got a foot at the backside. If you did well, you might get a pat on the back, but don't you brag about it. If you had a bit of a punch-up, generally you either avoided each other, nothing was said, or you got on with it and you bought each other a beer. if you followed the right football team, that always helped. But Australia was and the world, because I lived in the US for quite some time, the world was very tolerant. And now, and I think it's by design, I think it is by design, in this country it is by a small group that they're winning the battle. And the government's, no matter what you want to do, unless you do it together, the government is going to win. And
we're living through the planned collapse of Western civilization.
It's happening now as we see it. Yeah. Look, we've run out of time, and we've got to keep doing more of this because instead of me reading your post, it's better to talk to you. I feel much more important, Peter.
Yeah,
Peter Campion is a libertarian and a proponent of the traditional Australian values. Thank you very much for your time. By the way, Peter, just for those not familiar with it, what is your handle and how do they follow you?
On X, I'm at goodasdone because I feel that our nation now is good as done. It's probably very hard to save it. And on Substack, where I do my media commentary, it's just petercampion.substack.com.
Absolutely brilliant. Peter Campion, thank you so much for your time. This is The World Today.